Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. For a long time now, I've wondered about this quote from President Nelson. This is from November 1st, 2018. This was a social media post. This was his first year as president of the church. He said, "We're just at the exponential phase of growth, and it will continue. The Lord has said, I will hasten my work in its time." And he makes good on his promises. And then in a recent video, we have a brand new quote from Elder Gary E. Stevenson of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And he was talking about the centennial of South America and the missionary work starting in South America. That's going on right now. And toward the end, he used that same word. He said, "We are celebrating these 100 years just as it was announced in the dedicatory blessing. That growth would start slowly and then become exponential. And we trust what was taught in the last conference, that the next 100 years will be even better, as President Nelson said." I still don't know exactly where in this last conference this was said, or if it was said specifically that the next 100 years would be even better. But anyway, he again touched on this idea of exponential growth. Now, this is something that we saw with South America, but then with President Nelson, it seems like he's indicating that the church itself as a whole is going to grow exponentially. And so I've been left to wonder, is this something that is going to take place before the second coming? Is it going to take place when Christ comes and we have that big influx of members into the church? Are we going to see two periods of exponential growth? So I've just been waiting and waiting. And, well, I just got this email a couple hours ago from Woodcraft Supply Corner. Subject line, "In Salt Lake Trip," but I think they meant Trib, like Tribune, Salt Lake Tribune, "the world is seeing it." And then they post this screenshot that says, "LDS Church hits highest number of convert baptisms in its history." So thank you, Woodcraft Supply Corner, for sending this my way. I would have missed this, I'm sure, if it wasn't for your email. Let's take a look at this article. The rest of the title is this the start of a remarkable new surge? Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints enjoyed a new reason this week to celebrate. Their faith recently recorded the biggest jump in convert baptisms in its 195-year history. Okay, so we'll have to see how things play out, but this could be the start of that exponential growth. It really could be. Things may get really interesting really fast. Right, continuing, quote unquote, "This is remarkable." Apostle Quentin L. Cook said Thursday, according to a report in the Church News. So let's hop over there really quick, and then we'll come back to the Salt Lake Tribune article. Okay. At the beginning of this article by Mary Richards, it says, "The gathering of Israel is accelerating across the earth. The missionaries of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can be most effective in these efforts as they focus on the missionary purpose," Elder Quentin L. Cook of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles told new mission leaders gathered at the 2025 Seminar for New Mission Leaders. He spoke Thursday, June 9th, at the annual seminar held at the Provo Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah. Okay, so this is where this is being said. I don't know if this is being said for the first time publicly, but I'm so glad that they're publishing this. Look what it says here. There's even more here. Look at this. Elder Cook said that in 2024, he witnessed over 308,000 of God's children enter the waters of baptism and receive the precious gift of the Holy Ghost. That equates to about 50,000 more convert baptisms than 2023. It is more convert baptisms than the church has had in nearly 25 years. Just so you don't get confused, he's talking about 2024. And so you might be like, well, what do you mean? We've seen the most converts in a year. Just wait. So this is for the calendar year 2024, what he just said. But hold on. Quote, "And as exciting as this increase in baptisms was in 2024, we were delighted to learn that the rate of increase for new members attending sacrament meeting was even higher. We thank the Lord for allowing us to witness his hand in these remarkable outcomes. He is the reason for the hastening, Elder Cook said. He said, quote unquote, spiritual momentum, and that is a term that comes from President Nelson's talk from, I can't remember when, it may have been 2023, 2022. He said, this spiritual momentum has continued to increase in 2025. Compared to the first quarter of this year with the first quarter of 2024, every region of the world has seen at least a 20% increase in convert baptisms. I'm glad that he clarified that, because if he didn't say every region of the world, I may have assumed that maybe it's because of all this growth that we've been seeing in Africa. Africa has become a really important battleground in recent years between different faiths, including our own. Our church is growing really quickly there. There's all these temples that are being announced. I always point out that 20 years ago, when I went on my mission, there were only 3 temples. And now there's something like, I can't remember the number, but it's like 17, 18, something like that. So, but no, this 20% increase is every region in the world, the first quarter of 2025 compared to 2024. He continues, this is remarkable. In the last 12 months, ending May 31st. Okay, so before he was talking about calendar year 2024, now he's talking about from May 31st to May 31st, 2024 to 2025. Okay? The Lord's hastening of his work resulted in the largest number of convert baptisms in any 20 or 12-month period in this dispensation. So a record has been broken. And he doesn't give the exact number, but the last 12 months, not including June, the last 12 months have seen the most converts join the church of church history since the church has been restored. So that's pretty notable. It makes me excited. It makes me wonder, are we starting to see right now the exponential growth that President Nelson has talked about? So now let's go back to the Salt Lake Tribune article. There's some more down here. The news delighted independent researcher Matt Martinich, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, or Martinich, a Colorado-based Latter-day Saint who tracks church growth. Quote, these reports are highly encouraging after decades of stagnation or decline in annual convert baptisms. I'm going to go with Martinich, wrote on his blog at ldschurchgrowth.blogspot.com. This is it right here. I'll put a link for this in the description box below. This would be a good one. Excuse me. This would be a good one to bookmark and follow because he is on top of it. So, okay, continuing. Quote, from 2000 to 2019, the average was 264,769 per year. The church's all-time high for the most converts ever baptized in a single calendar year was 330,877 in 1990. The next highest years were 1996 with 321,000, 1989 with 318,000, almost 319, and 1997 with 317,000. Last year, the number of convert baptisms, 308,682, was the highest reported in nearly 3 decades. Okay, so yeah. Cook never revealed the exact number of converts baptized in the recent record-breaking period, but it would have to be more than 330,877. Quote, if the number of convert baptism increases by 20% in 2025, Martinich estimated, that would be 370,418,000 approximately 40,000 more than the previous all-time high. And if that trajectory continues into 2026, he argued, the church may witness the highest sustained growth in convert baptisms since the early 90s, a dramatic reversal after 2 decades of stagnation and slowing membership growth rates. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I have a spreadsheet where I've attempted to keep track of some of these things. What I want to do, and I don't know exactly how to do this. I know that there's like the church statistical reports. I don't know if I'm going to be able to track them back, throughout all of church history, or where to, how long that's been published. But I want to add another column here that shows how many convert baptisms each year. There's a Wikipedia article that tracks membership growth, but it just shows, the growth between convert baptisms and children of record and all that stuff. So, but anyway, this is what I have right now. And so let me just do the quick review of how things have gone. This is my spreadsheet called Timeline Missionary Work. So let's look at full-time missionaries, for example. That's one thing to look at. So in 2012, that's when, under President Monson's presidency, the mission age was dropped. And so we had a big influx of missionaries for a couple of years. And then it started to taper off. And then during the pandemic, it was at its lowest level since probably, it looks like maybe 2009, 2010. But then there started to be a rebound. And darn, I should have had that other Wikipedia article up with those numbers. But basically, more or less, the number of new members of the church kind of mirror the number of missionaries. So yeah, things had stagnated. If we go back further, you have a bunch of missionaries right here. Here's the timeline of how things have progressed since the year 2000. In 2002, there was this big thing about raising the bar, that the church couldn't have missionaries go out on missions when they didn't even have a testimony, or they weren't worthy. They weren't prepared to go on missions, because I guess that's kind of how it had been before that point. So they raised the bar, a higher standard to qualify to go on a mission. And then after that, a couple years later, and this is when I went on my mission in 2004, Preach My Gospel was introduced, and that replaced the discussions from before. I think it was the 6 discussions, or 6 or 9, I think it was 6. Okay. After that, 2012, the lowering of the mission age. And then President Nelson comes on the scene in 2018, and immediately between the April and the October General conferences of that year, during the Hope of Israel Worldwide Youth Devotional, he introduced the concept of the Lord's Youth Battalion. And I'm not going to pull up the quote right now, but we know that President Nelson has said that we're in the bottom half of the 9th inning. That's when you have the last team that's up to bat. And I think that this is that team, the Lord's Youth Battalion. I've expressed that many times over. But, after he introduced the Lord's Youth Battalion, we had this issue with the pandemic, and I'm sure that the adversary was involved in that. And so that hampered things for a little while. There were still missionaries and everything, but convert baptisms went down. The number of missionaries went down. But since that time, we've been seeing a rebound. Things have been increasing. Notably, again, I think it was the April 2022 General Conference, President Nelson made a request for more people to go on missions. And there were many speakers, especially on Saturday that spoke about going on missions. And that was kind of like the theme of Saturday. But then President Nelson gave a request for anyone who's worthy to go on a mission, especially young men, because for young men, it's a priesthood responsibility. And so after he did that, the numbers have continued to go up. And for 2024, it's at 74,000. That's the highest level since 2015. So in about 10 years, we'll see what it is for 2025 when they report that. And then we had The second edition of Preach My Gospel that was put out in 2023. Now, I want to hop over to my spreadsheet called Quotes Second Coming. And this quote right here goes along with what's going on with this missionary surge. You can find this in Deseret News, June 28th, 2023. The name of the article is The Number of Latter-day Saint Missionaries is Rising Rapidly by Suzanne Bates and Jacob Hess. Okay. Fewer children are being born today in most countries, and yet even with fewer available, more are going out, Elder Cook said. If you look at the youth, their activity rate is higher than it has been. Convert baptisms have also increased, Elder Cook said, up 25% in the first quarter of 2023 compared to last year. The number of missionaries serving has increased steadily since President Russell M. Nelson asked young people to go on missions at the April General Conference in 2022. Some 56,000 at the end of 2021 to 68,000 by June 14th of this year. Quote, and we really do feel like we'll exceed 72,000 by the end of the year, Elder Cook said. Now, remember, for 2024, he got up to 74,000. So, okay. The influx of missionary applications led to a need for more members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles to make mission assignments. Typically, 2 apostles assign mission calls weekly, but in recent months, as many as 4 apostles have been making up to 300 calls a week, Elder Cook said. Much of this runs counter to the popular narrative that young people are less religious today, yet new data tracking attitudes across generations show an uptick in religiosity among the religious members of the millennial and Gen Z generations compared to baby boomers and Gen X. Overall, religiosity is down among all Americans over the past few decades, and yet compared with earlier generations, there are signs that young people are even more committed to their faith. Later in the article, the phenomenon church leaders are seeing among young people who are signing up to go on missions is that they are responding in higher numbers, in higher percentages than previous generations, Elder Cook said. As Elder Marcus B. Nash, a General Authority 70 and the executive director of the church's missionary department, said at the Missionary Training Center, quote, there's just something going on, and I don't know how to explain it other than the prophet spoke in April 2022, and this rising generation that he teaches us was held in reserve are responding. I think they're the last team, you guys. The last ones that are up to bat before the second coming, and maybe the transition team, because missionary work will continue into the millennium. It doesn't stop at the second coming. So we're starting to really see the fruits of what they were talking about here with this missionary surge. More missionaries, we're seeing more convert baptisms. The most that we've seen in church history. That is crazy. I want to read just a few more quotes. This one is from President Jeffrey R. Holland, acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. This is after he rededicated the St. George, Utah temple. You can find this in a YouTube video posted by KSL News. President Holland rededicates historic St. George, Utah temple. All right, he says, these temples are being built for very large numbers of people to be having their temple experiences and making those covenants and changing the history of the world. I want to point out really quick, whenever I show my spreadsheet where I show the number, the ratio of the number of members of the church to the number of temples, for some reason, I always get pushback on that. People don't like the idea that the church is going to grow really fast, or they don't think it's going to happen. And so they'll say things like, well, you have to remember the reason why this is happening, why we have all these temples, is because they want to have temples close to the members so that you're within an hour drive of a temple. Was it an hour or 2 hours? Let me know in the comments below. I forgot. And that could be partially true. But based on what President Nelson has said and what President Holland said in this quote, I think my assertion is correct. I think that they foresee a large influx of members joining the church. Because to keep the ratio the same, if it was the same as 2023, that's the last time I updated it, or just the historic church ratio of members to temples, the church would have to grow to about 32 to 42 million. That was my projection to keep the status quo. So it probably is a combination of bringing temples closer to people, but President Holland says these temples are being built for very large numbers of people. So I'm going to go ahead and believe him. Okay, I have another one from President Holland. This is from a Church News podcast, episode 204. The interviewer is Sherry Dew, August 30th, 2024. President Holland. So young people, I think they are magnificent, and we are in an absolutely magnificent period now. The demographics of the country of the US, and for the most part of the world, is declining. So we have a smaller pool to draw from, broadly speaking. But for us in the church, and not just missions and not just temples, but virtually everything we are doing in the church is increasing. So that is, I don't know, to my little narrow head, that seems like a kind of double win. We're going against a smaller pool, and we're getting more success from that wonderful, wonderful community of young Latter-day Saints. It is magnificent. I could go on all night about this, but I should not. I wish you would. I wish you would. I'm sure that you have so much more that you could say. And then we have this from President Nelson's October 2024 General Conference talk. The Lord Jesus Christ will come again. My dear brothers and sisters, do you see what is happening right before our eyes? I pray that we will not miss the majesty of this moment. The Lord is indeed hastening his work. Why are we building temples at such an unprecedented pace? Why? Because the Lord has instructed us to do so. The blessings of the temple help gather Israel on both sides of the veil. These blessings also help prepare a people who will help prepare the world for the second coming of the Lord. Okay, back to President Holland. I love this one. This is from Church News, an article by Leah Haynes. This week on social, President Nelson on dedicating the church's 200th temple. I am filled with awe. President Holland says, whatever you think the church is going to be, it's going to be a lot more than that. I think he knows something. I think he knows what's down the road. I think they all do. President Nelson, social media post, November 10th, 2024. When I contemplate the privilege of dedicating the Deseret Peak, Utah temple this weekend, I am filled with awe at all the Lord is doing for his people. When I was born, there were just 6 operating temples in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Deseret Peak temple will be the 200th in the world. Just think of it. It took the church until the year 2000 to dedicate the first 100 temples. And now, just 24 years later, we are dedicating the second 100. The Lord is truly hastening his work. I'm filled with gratitude for the Lord's mercy in guiding us to bring temples closer to members of the church throughout the world. Okay. And that may have been, a couple more, or at least one more. We have this one, Gospel Topics and Questions. This is from an essay that's on there. And it has to do with, this right here, wise stewardship of church funds. It talks about helping to prepare the world for the second coming of the Lord. And then it says this preparation will require many more missionaries, meeting houses, and temples, as well as greatly expanded family history resources. So, yeah, and I think, that's it. That's the last one that I have. There's also, I'm not going to go over this, but in case you want to look into this further, there's this article that was put out by Salt Lake Tribune. This was from April 5th, but it talks about, some concerns that the church may have. Like, there's a lot of growth. And of course, the Salt Lake Tribune always puts a negative spin on things. So that's kind of the angle I think that they're coming from. But they talk about the fact that children of record, that number, unfortunately, is going down. So that's one thing that would add to the membership of the church once those children turn 8 years old and become members of the church. But anyway, I'll put a link for that in the description box below. But this is pretty exciting. This is pretty exciting that we just seen the largest number of converts within a 12-month period. And if I were to guess, I think that that's going to continue. I believe President Nelson. I think that we're going to see exponential growth. So, okay, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.